tried everything we know to do. Well, just like anything else, you can learn new skills, new strategies, new tools, and sometimes not saying that it's a one size fits all and there's one solution that can resolve maybe years and years
There
of
is,
neglect.
and we're going to share that one.
Oh no, I was just, so it's just something, but there are some things that you can actually try, and that's what we want to actually provide with you because when you get to the point where you feel like you've done everything that you possibly can do, it can be kind of hopeless. But there is some other strategies that you can try that we want to suggest that you may want to think about.
And you know what? I said this earlier in the week. We want to work with couples about to get married and on the verge of divorce. You know why? Because you're both in the same place. You know, except one of you knows you don't know, and the other one doesn't. But there are things that we just don't know what we don't know. And so it's just important that you realize that while, like, and I love what Gil said, you tried everything you know, but have you allowed yourself to be open to the fact that if you're the smartest person in the room, maybe you need to go into another room.
So the yes, and so have you heard this statement? This is something that you can actually try. Argue less and talk more. That may sound simple and just like, well, that makes so much sense. But you think about it, everything is not an argument.
No.
Everything doesn't have to be an argument. Everything doesn't have to be, because what tends to happen is there's multiple things that have been left unaddressed. And what happens is they get piled on top of each other, and therefore arguments start over the littlest things. Somebody left the cap off the toothpaste. You left dishes in the sink. You
Left
didn't
your
gas up
laundry
the
in the laundry
car. You
room.
left socks on the floor. Those are all symptoms. We talk about that a lot in videos in the past, that those are all symptoms that couples focus on and not the root cause of what's really, really going on. And not the root cause of what's really, really going on. And that talking more is what you really have to work through all of the unnecessary, nonsensical, trivial things like socks and toothpaste and all that kind of things like I just named, and focus on the thing that is really the root cause of what you may think is the issue.
And one of the ways you can talk more and argue less is that in every relationship, you have a talker and you have a listener. So just try this. Talkers, practice listening. Listeners, practice talking. Because you're only going to get, if you are the talker, you're good at talking, but you probably suck at listening. If you are the listener, you're good at listening, you probably suck at talking. And so just that shift from, talking more and arguing less is change your role. If you are normally the person who talks all the time, listen. If you're the person who always listens, talk.
And when you go and you bring in an external person like a mentor, a pastor, a counselor,
A
or
coach.
a coach, this is something that you have to do before you even get to that point. Is you have to have a heart that is surrendered to say, I want to do better. I want this to last. I want to get better at this situation, because it can feel hopeless, but you have to think about that long before you get to that point.
Very good.
No comment that you want to add to
No
that?
comment,
Okay.
no comment.
Okay.
No comment.
And then you also have to think about those temporary behaviors that you do. Sometimes things get going good and they go to this lull period, and therefore it seems like everything is great. Well, that is kind of going back to the very beginning of the nonsensical things. Those are unresolved things that still are just left dormant for a season, because the holidays roll around and you want to have this harmonious, peaceful music is going, people are in a good mood, everything is just flowing, and therefore it gets to the point where you want to just overlook and just think it's gonna get better.
Yeah, and things don't, if nothing changes, nothing changes. I don't know, we did a video once about sweeping things under the rug. The only problem about sweeping things under the rug is that eventually you start to cough and sneeze because all those the dust and and you may even trip over what's under the rug. And so while you may think that it's resolved, if it's never been brought up, it's never been talked about, the minute something happens, all those things that were ignored or overlooked are not going to surface up, and you feel like you're in this cycle of repeating the same conversations because it was never really addressed and brought up, and you were never forgiven or you never asked for forgiveness.
And speaking of address, there are some things that happen that you have to think about that rarely go addressed when it comes to situations about lies that we have believed and told. We want to kind of target some of
I
those
love what you
things.
said.
What's that?
The lies we believe and the lies we tell about divorce.
It's that's self, yeah. So there's some things that you have to address and think about, because when you have ignored it or you have left it unattended, it may be the source of what you're actually going through. The first one I think is pretty common and a lot of people ignored is the childhood traumas. When you have things that you have just suppressed and buried, sometimes it takes professional help to unearth those things, and sometimes you already know what they are. That's what you have to face and understand, that that could be the source of some of the conflict and some of the unresolved things that you're experiencing, because those can be those items that have been ignored.
Yeah. And so what he said is basically what we always say, there's no such thing as marriage problems. There's individual problems you bring into your marriage. And so it's important that we begin to look inward and we say, Lord, show me the parts of my heart that are unresolved, that are unhealed, that are unexamined. Because one of the things that we do when we work with couples is we do an assessment. And we allow the assessment to show you your growth areas and your strengths. It allows someone else other than a person to tell you what you may think you know or what you may already know. And the Bible says it is written. Write the vision down, make it plain so those that run can run with clarity. It's something about seeing things written down that really solidifies it, and it really gives you evidence that, man, I need to really work on that.
And this is a big one. Number 2, pride. Pride and self-protection. Sometimes we can have experienced hurt from past relationships or even the present one that we're in that has just been unresolved. And therefore we go into a defensive mode where we start looking to protect ourselves from more hurt. So therefore you go into that prideful stance or the self-protection mode to say, you know what, this is not going to happen again. I'm not going to be a victim of this again. I'm tired of going through the same things over and over and over again. Well, that is something that you got to address. This what is the source of the pride?
Yeah.
And what is the source of that self-protection? That gets to the root cause. Again, it goes back to the root. What is the root of our discontentment? Because most people go their separate ways because they're discontent in something that has happened or currently happening in their relationship.